Hello everyone, I am Bets and I'm here with you today. This new set called Potions and Spells, it just came out from Stampin' Up. I showed it yesterday with some of the other new releases that just came out July 3rd, 2024. You can find this in the link provided down below. And though I did buy the die cut set to go along with it, I actually am just going to use the stamps today. Originally, when I had decided to use this set and do this video, I was going to create about 8 different types of cards. And so I prepared my card bases, but as I progressed through this, I realized that I just wanted to focus on the alcohol ink markers that I purchased because I realized that I desperately needed some, and I gave all my Copic markers away because I thought I was getting out of crafting. And so I replaced them with new alcohol ink markers. I'm on a budget, so I also couldn't really afford the Copic markers, at least not in the quantity that I wanted. And I found Stampin' Ups, and so I purchased the colors that I know that I would use. And after doing this, I realized that I need more. I need a black, and you'll see why later. But anyway, I did set up some card bases here, and you'll be able to see what I do with those in tomorrow's video. I wanted to do some fun folds on this, and so this was one of the card bases that I was going to make, and you'll see that tomorrow. And then this one is just a gatefold. And again, I'll show you those cards tomorrow. I'm also going to utilize in tomorrow's video the die cuts as well as some ink blending. And so today's video is primarily focused on a masking stamping technique, and then also on just trying out the new Stampin' Up alcohol ink markers. And you'll see what I think of them. I love alcohol markers, but at the end of the day, Copic has always been my standby. They just tend to work best. I've tried some other ones that are good quality, but the nubs are not great. And so it's like you have to have the perfect ink, and then also you want to make sure your nubs don't release too much ink, because then you saturate your paper and yada yada yada. I'm also going to give you some tips and tricks on how to use alcohol ink markers in this video, and then you can make your decision on if this is something that you want to get as well. These type of markers from Stampin' Up, they are cheaper I should say, not cheap. Copic markers, last time I was in the market shopping for them was over 4 years ago, and they would run me between $6 and $9 a piece. These come in a set of 2, and they are only $11 for the set, so $5.50 a piece. All right, so anyway, moving on from there, I am going to stamp out some images on this, making this card. I'm sorry I'm off screen a little bit, but I'll pull it up in a minute. I'm still getting used to my overhead camera. So this is a masking technique that I'm going to use here. So I'm just going to stamp out that bird. I'm making sure that since I am going to use my Copic markers, I got to make sure that I use the right ink. And so when you're looking for ink, you can't use anything. Look for something that says that it is you can use it with alcohol markers. Okay, so make sure you do that. So I'm just laying out where I want my big pot to go, cauldron to go, and then I'm picking up my stamping it out, and I'm using my really awesome squeegee. Also got that from Stampin' Up. Love that thing. It's so good. And then from here, I had taken masking paper. You can get masking paper anywhere. Mine's from Stampin' Up, of course, just because that's kind of what I'm using these days. It's one and done shopping for me. Pretty easy. I do like this paper. And then I'm just placing it over my image to protect it as I stamp it out. And so I stamp the image on the masking paper and then cut it out, and then I just put it over my 2 images, and now I'm going to make sure that I get that piece laid out perfectly there. And the Misty is, man, really is my best friend. I was trying not to buy one, but I had to go on scrapbook.com and grab one because I desperately need it. And that little tool is awesome. So once I got that done, now I want to add some fun bubbles. And I just laid that out. And then I'm using my Stampin' Up! Ink pads with this. I'm getting used to these ink pads. They flip over and then push through. I really like the pads on them and how the ink lays out. It is pretty nice. The construction of thankfully the construction of the ink pads themselves are good in the sense that there's little feet on the bottom of it and pivots in the other one, so you can store them like that. Otherwise, they'd be challenging to store because of the size, but they do stack nicely. And then I'm just adding out some more bubbles using that same ink pad that I did. And you can find all of this again in my link provided down below. And just put some sentiments on, and now I'm removing my masking from my image. It's really sticky, a little bit concerned I was going to tear, but I didn't. I've never torn with this. It sticks well, and that's hard because you want your masking to stick well, but then you also want it to be able to come up, and it does. All right, so these are the alcohol ink markers. They're double-ended, and they have a very similar tip to a Copic. They lay beautifully. I forgot to put a extra piece of paper under this. I always encourage you to do that because what it does is it allows that extra ink to absorb into the bottom paper and not reabsorb into your image and giving you a coloring outside of the lines image. So I like to lay down my light color first. You can technically lay your dark color down in the shading and then go over it with the lighter, but I find that this gives a softer effect. And then I'm just following the lines on my stamp to color in this image, to know where to shade it. Sometimes that can be tricky, trying to figure out where to shade the image. So I always cheat and use the artist's lines that are on the stamp. And that pretty much leaves you with perfect shading. And then I'm just going back through. I didn't think that those little handles were dark enough, so I wanted just to go back through and darken them up. That's another good thing I like about alcohol ink is, even though it's a scary name, an alcohol ink marker, it's very forgiving. I find it more forgiving than anything else. In fact, if you color outside of the lines, you can, if you're doing other colors, you can actually kind of blend it and camouflage it with other colors. If you do get totally outside the lines, you're going to see in a minute what I do here. There are color blenders that come, but that's really a deceptive name. It's really a color eraser. So when I do the crow, I get a little bit in his eye. And what I do is I just take my color blender, and you'll see me do it, and I push that ink out of the eye back into the image, so to speak, and it erases the ink entirely. And I do that around the edges as well. So when you go in with your color blender to clean it up, you just want to kind of push it back into the image. If you have a white pen, you also can go around and color the white over it, and that will help camouflage it as well. But I really like using that color blender image. Okay, so there we go. That's what the little pot looks like. And from here, I'm going to go into the bird. And this is when I realized that I really need to get a black alcohol ink. And so I had colored it blue. Whenever you're trying to do black, always do a blue base. And I got a little bit in the eye, so I pulled that out. Then I'm going in with a darker blue here and just doing some shading and whatnot. And then finally I'm going in with a purple. And I really should have probably stopped there, but I really wanted the crow to be black. And so I went in with gray, and now I'm really not liking it, but I'm in it. So here we go. So I've just decided, okay, you know what? Let me just take some of this color out and lighten it up. And it ended up being okay once I did that. So those are the colors that I'm going to blend in with the background. And then I also go ahead and stamp my new signature stamp. I don't know what happened to my big lips. They're somewhere. If you guys have followed me, you know that I have a stamp that says Bets Golden on it with the lips. So anyway, I am pulling in a different, like a purpley on this. I'm sorry I'm not knowing the names. They are there on those stamp pads. And again, you'll be able to find them on my link provided down below. And I'm just starting to blend this in. Hindsight 2020, wish I would have done the whole thing in this purple around the edges, but I didn't. That's what I get for coming back into crafting, is I'm a little bit rusty, but we'll get with it. I'll start to figure it out a little bit better. And I'm just using the blending brushes on this. When I'm done using the blending brushes, at this time I only have 3. So when I do use them, I try to keep them in the same color family as to not contaminate my colors. But once I'm done with the brush entirely, I throw it off in a little jar of water. And then I just add a little bit of soap, rinse it out, and then let them dry. I would like to end up getting more of those brushes. I really like them, but I'm not at that point where I can do that yet. And then from here, I go in and I use, I think that's a pumpkin pie one or something. I use that as well. Like I said, I really wish I would have just gone around and done the purple, but oh well, too bad. The one thing I am noticing about this is a water reactive ink, which I really like, but it's not, it's like dye ink too. So what that means is as it dries, it sets into the paper and it dyes the paper. But if you've ever dyed your clothes, you know that if it's wet still, it can transfer. And that's what this is, in essence, for your paper. So as I'm doing this, I'm like, man, I got a little bit too much ink up in that corner. And I really wish, that line wasn't so hard. And so you'll see me go in and spritz it with water in hopes that it moves a little bit. And it does. But the cool thing is, once it's completely dry, it can't move. So I love this ink. I really do. I like this type of ink. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And you're going to see me spritz it with some water there in a minute. All right. I hope that you enjoyed this. Make sure you check out my affiliated links down below. I do get a little bit of kickback from that, and I do appreciate it. Until next time, I am not Bets Golden, but I am Bets. Went through a divorce. Don't have the last name anymore. I go by Betsy Morris now. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Questions or comments, leave them down below for me. And hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. It really helps me out. My channel's not monetized at this time. And so I hope you didn't have any commercials.